as well as this resource. But we do want to share with you today a little bit about LevelUp, but also just in general, combining technology with traditional resources. This goes way back for me, because in the 80s, when we were really talking about implementing technology into the classroom, that was really my role in the district that I was teaching in. I became the classroom liaison to the district to help other teachers integrate technology. And here we are many, many years later, still kind of looking at how we can do that and how to do it well. So you will notice in here that there are screenshots that are from our product LevelUp, which is a K-2, pre-K to 2 literacy product. That's because that is what I have pictures of right now. But truthfully, we could talk about combining technology and traditional resources with any of the technology that you already may have access to. And that's really the generality that I want to, of the picture that I want to paint, that's kind of the scenario that I want to talk about this in. Just in general, combining technology with traditional resources to increase literacy. Again, I have access to LevelUp, so those are my pictures, and I will show you LevelUp at the end, but again, this is something that I love it because it's really something that applies no matter what your technology is. All right, so with that, it is a new world, and I don't like to read to people but that are well read, but I do like to make sure that I pause and give you time, so I'll do that. And so we do know that, you know, everything is touched by technology today. And when folks come to us and say, we just got to you know, our foundation or this community organization has funded us and we now have one-to-one, you know, devices, and we want to be sure that we are using them optimally, and what are some of the things that we can do with those one-to-one devices, that's always, you know, great. But even if you have an old computer at the back of the room or several that kids go through in centers, teachers today are really the experts on being able to integrate technology. What I think is interesting now is it feels like sort of we're coming full circle now to the technology has a place, and there are things that technology does really, really well. There's also things that you can never take away that the teacher does really, really well. So how do you integrate those things, traditional resources, traditional teaching strategies with technology? This is from our friends at the Center for Digital Education. And I really liked the skilled integration, because it isn't something that you just automatically know how to do, but we do have a lot of educators out there that are very skilled at integrating. We'll talk a little bit about how some of the technology pieces lend themselves to certain things that we're doing in the classroom. And then there are pieces that will always be better served by the teacher. And peer-to-peer as well. So today we just want to talk about the advantages of technology when it comes to looking at reading level and monitoring progress. Talk about how strategies can be, what strategies there are and how they're being used for blending both digital and traditional resources for building skills, for practice, and for applying what our learning is into real life scenarios. We're going to talk about immediate formative assessment results that are one of the most wonderful thing I think that technology brings to us, and how being able to do that with technology is actually a time saver, and then how skilled teachers are using that extra time, not that there's a whole lot of extra time, but if you are using something that technology can do well and that frees you up, how that you then would take that time to use it in other things where you're needed. And then again, just discuss student choice and peer collaboration and gamification just as ways to motivate literacy. And I think technology is great for that, in that motivation, because most of the time kids are motivated to read. Even kids who won't pick up a traditional book or magazine are more likely to read on the computer. So as I go through this, you know, I don't want it to be a complete lecture, but since we can't hear you, I will ask you to chat in, and we will pause if you have questions. So please feel free to interrupt with questions at any time. I'm happy to take those, and Cindy as well. So research basically is what was used by Metametrics, and there's a host of research studies that Metametrics has done, and we partner with Metametrics for their Lexile assessments, as well as to Lexile the books that we have in our collection. So now we're able to match those Lexile levels that students have with the books of the same Lexile level. We look at a comprehension level, which is going to be 100 below to 50 above, which is that zone where we know children are challenged but not frustrated. So that comprehension level, using Metametrics or whatever you're using, maybe you're not using Metametrics, but obviously determining comprehension level is key. And again, when you see this screen, it's kind of just a sort of a stop and think kind of a sign to say, all right, we're talking about comprehension levels or whatever we're talking about, but right now on comprehension levels, and whether it's Lexiles or something else, to think about how that's done traditionally, how it can be done digitally, and in your classroom, how you do it and how you might do it. So whenever you see this screen, think about whatever it is we just mentioned in those two contexts, in the traditional and in the digital. So if I'm thinking of getting the comprehension level of my students and pinpointing that for targeted instruction, how would I do that traditionally? How can I do it digitally? And so there's a variety of ways and strategies that that's being used across classrooms in our country. What is one better than the other? Does one lend itself better? I will say that within, you know, where I'm seeing where there can be short tests, multiple choice or closed passage assessments, you know, at regular intervals, because reading takes time, you are able to monitor and track reading growth, and you get over time a valid and reliable measure of that. Now, that alone, I would never say is the gospel. I would say that is one of multiple measures to be combined with teachers' good sense and their observations and other measures that they're using in the classroom for progress monitoring. But I do think it reinforces, because sometimes when we have lots of kids, we sort of have them grouped, but it's nice to have that little bit of extra reinforcement with something that is digital and gives us immediately not only where that what that progress looks like, but also can recommend reading that's going to be on that new level. So we're not giving kids reading materials or texts that are either too hard or too easy. And again, progress monitoring. There's traditional, there's digital. What do you use and when do you use it is really up to that skilled teacher to be able to integrate. For skill building, we know the building blocks of reading. We know the skills, the phonemic awareness, phonics, etc., that are critical to be proficient at reading. So we know that we have to engage kids in these strategies to build these skills. So I'm amazed when I observe in classrooms at all the simultaneous skill building at various levels. And we all know that kids come in with various reading levels, and they're always at different levels. So it's amazing to me to see how that skill building is going on in classrooms. I would like just for a minute for you to think about, and you don't have to type it in, but think about what strategies you use in your classroom to build those literacy skills that we just talked about. It might be flashcards, it might be peer-to-peer sorts of activities. Could be choral reading, it can be reading out loud to you so that you're looking at fluency, etc. You may use specific assessment methodology in different ways, depending on what your grade levels are that you're working with to check comprehension and progress. Just think about what are the strategies that you use to build literacy skills. And I'm sure there's a lot of them. And again, are some of those in the traditional mode and are some of those digital? And is one better than the other? You know, for some children, sometimes traditional is the best way. For some, maybe it's digital. But I think it's interesting to sort of think it through in that context. That skill building that you're doing, does it lend itself best for certain students to do traditional, to just build skills in traditional ways? Or is there a digital way that might enhance that? And besides skill building, once we've built those skills, kids need to practice those skills, right? So practicing with feedback is how we have students improve as readers and as writers. And once again, this one I think is interesting. What activities do you facilitate for students to practice those literacy skills that you've just taught? But also, how is individualized feedback provided? And that can be something, again, when we have groups of children, how are we making sure that we're, as they're practicing and they need that guided practice, how are we getting that individual feedback, which is critical as well, back to them? And again, is that best done digitally or traditionally? And I can't answer that because I don't know your situation, and every classroom is a little bit different and teachers have different styles. I do know that for me, you know, there are some things where I need kids just to do some practice after I've taught and I'm working with children on another skill, and they can be on the computer and practicing and getting that guidance and that scaffolding and feedback that's critical. That helps me personally. I think back to my own days of learning to read, and I wonder how teachers even did it before there was technology, but they did. Somehow they did, and some still do. So it's not that it can't be done. And then, of course, we know real learning takes place when we apply those skills into real life activities. So how are you applying these skills then? And is that best done, again, online or not? So just think through, and maybe you want to type in for us now, how do your students apply new skills that they just learned in real life scenarios? And if you want to, you can, or you may just want to think through it. I'll just, I don't know if you can see my chat, but so I'm saying in my classroom, I use homework, read aloud to parents. You know, we expect certain amounts of reading to be done 20 minutes a night or whatever. And that's how we apply some of those reading skills that we've learned. And sometimes they're different depending on what we're learning and what we're practicing. Again, could that be done? Could the practice that or the application that you're having done, can that be done traditionally? Can it be done digitally? And is there one that's advantageous? Maybe. Another really critical part to getting kids to be excellent readers, as you well know, is formative assessment. We have to periodically check for understanding, and this is what really is going to give you the information to know whether they've mastered it or they're ready to move on and have something more challenging, or if it's time to redo, reteach, or review. So again, I like being able to check in many ways. for understanding and multiple measures. But again, there are traditional ways of doing that. Everybody raise your hand, everybody do this, stand up if you know what letter this starts with, all of those great things. And then there's also a digital way to get those periodic assessments that tell us quickly and easily where kids are. So this one I think is another interesting one. How do you check for understanding of literacy skills periodically, and is it time consuming? Because again, you probably don't have 4 kids in your class. So how are you making sure? And sometimes when I see things on the news about teachers and they get out at 3 o'clock and they have summers off, I laugh because people have no idea until they've walked in those shoes how much work it is, bar none, the hardest job I've ever had. So I do think that, you know, how you check for, we know all the great building blocks of excellent teaching, but getting it all done with all those kids, and especially when you're reading, is really interesting. So, and takes quite a bit. So I am in tier 3 readings for some formative assessment. My largest group is 4. Oh, okay. Well, cool. That is good. And you're in a district then, Stephanie, where you do have the luxury of, you know, you're being that, and I'm sure the classroom teachers appreciate so much having that reading specialist and someone who can help with that those tiered students. Not all of our districts have that, you know, some folks do and some folks don't, but I think that's great in that you do it weekly and you're always on top of where kids are, which is great. Terrific. And then I think this is an interesting one too, because research is telling us that the more time teachers spend with students, the higher the achievement, the more improvement we see in achievement. So again, using technology for formative assessment and reporting progress is going to save some of that time, and then that time can be direct instruction of students as needed. So again, I think increasing teaching time, it's one of the things we've been trying to do for 20 years. We've thought about extending school days. We've tried year-round school. But I think truthfully, you know, kids can only take in so much for so long. And just like Cindy was saying earlier, for example, today is Friday the 13th, the trifecta, also a full moon, and also, what was the third thing, Cindy? I can't remember. But 3 ways that we've got kids. Oh, it's
a week before Christmas.
The week before Christmas. There you go. Okay. It's actually the week before Christmas, though, isn't it, technically? But still, oh, before Christmas break for kids.
Right, before Christmas break, right.
Yeah. Right. So you've got kids that are, you know, if you can get them to even stay in the seats, it's a miracle. So, increasing teaching time, if you think about, you know, there are, and I even think sometimes after testing is done in the spring, like what can we do that's different after that? Because again, not that it's wasted time, but it's not the same instructional time as it is before, you know, the tests, and then right before pools open and all those other things. So how are we increasing teaching time or time with teachers? If we can use some technology for some of what we know technology does well, that gives us that little bit of extra time. Another thing that we know from research is allowing students to self-select their materials that they read increases the motivation to read. And I think this is critical to mention, that if we let them select text that's outside of that zone, so if you see that at the bottom here, you see if I have a student who's reading on a 90 or testing at a 90 Lexile level, they could have material up to 50 above and 100 below. So that would be that zone where it's challenging enough that they're growing, but it's not so hard that they're frustrated. So if they're not, you know, if we are allowing them to choose their reading materials, we know that increases their motivation, but we have to balance that with making sure they're reading in a zone that makes sense for maximum growth as a reader. same thing with if there's no stretch, if it's too easy or if it's too hard, same thing. We're not optimizing the growth that students could be making. And this is interesting as well, because when students choose, are they choosing books in the library, traditional books? Are they choosing books that are digital? And how are you making sure they're on the right level? I'm of the belief that real books that I can hold in my hand are never going to go away and will always be important. I do think that a blend of both traditional and digital can be very motivating for kids and can also be helpful. And then peer collaboration. One of the things I really love to think about is it's not called language arts for nothing. So the language, the conversation that kids have with the teacher and with each other is critical as well, not just for our English language learners, but for all learners of literacy skills. So this is just one example of, you can print out books and kids can, even if they can't follow these directions, they can have, a paraprofessional or someone with them that can help them, fold them, put them together. They can be printed out full page. They can be printed out half page. There's other activities like graphic organizers that tie reading to writing, as well as book report templates, etc. And so you have a lot of ways that you can work offline and have peer collaboration with what's happening digitally and be able to make that rich language and those conversations that happen as kids are working together on those kinds of offline sorts of projects, tied together with what they're learning in your classroom. So I think that peer collaboration and just the conversations in general, it's important to have those. And so I think anything that promotes that, whether it's digital, online, offline, again, still important, very important to making sure we have kids that are growing into fantastic readers and writers. And then motivation, again, this is a picture of LevelUp Land, which is is a game that is in our product. And it's a way for kids to earn points. And what I like about it is that, research is showing that you've got to have time spent practicing reading. But how do you get those reluctant kids to engage in reading for pleasure or to practice and apply skills? It's not always easy, especially students who are reluctant to read or struggling. So we have this as a motivation, but it doesn't just have to be this. But how are you motivating kids that are reluctant to read? So Stephanie, I'd be very interested in how you motivate kids to read that are really reluctant, because I know in your job you probably run across those kids. And we have everything from, and I've seen everything from points, I've seen, contests, I've seen, parent motivation to help be the partner. Lots of things are used, but I think one of the things that's very important about what we do digitally here is that it's not about how well you read, it's about that grit and that wanting, that growth mindset of, I'm going to try, I'm going to read, I may not be the best at it, but I'm going to spend time on the program and reading. And that's what they're rewarded for. They're rewarded for the time spent in the program. It doesn't have anything to do with how well they read. It's just about time spent reading. So with that, unless you have questions, Stephanie, I will go in and show you a quick demo of LevelUp. Let's see, I'm gonna make sure I'm not missing.
Stephanie has chatted.
Yeah.
Are you seeing that?
I am.
Yeah, it is. It's very difficult.
Yeah. And I think the more research we're getting and the more research I'm reading on dyslexia, the more skilled we're getting at dealing with the differences and how what we have to overcome. I was just in New York with one of our vice presidents who has a son who's 29 and just graduated with his doctorate. And he's dyslexic. And she said it's been a struggle, but he's learned to compensate probably by working with people like you, Stephanie, that have those, strategies and skills to help folks that have a challenge overcome those or figure out ways around it. Oh, yes. Good. With Ordom Gilliam. Right. And so we find, a lot of different folks are using this product that I'm going to show you, but it is something that I think because it's motivating, you can get kids who struggle to read. You also don't have that stigma of what you're reading because everybody's on the computer and reading their own thing and not really paying attention to who's reading at what level. But it does allow you to make sure that kids do get the reading materials on the appropriate level based on what their latest assessment is telling them. They can search, but at the same time, they have recommendations of books that are on the right level. So let me just go in here. And I'm going to go in as a student. And what I love about this is that it is simple. It's specifically for students that are pre-K to second grade. Some folks are using it with third grade, but it's really put together with the intention of serving the pre-K to second grade market. Children who come on are not overwhelmed with a lot of buttons and bells. They see a banner at the top that is our newest books or books that are in season or have something to do with a specific current topic.
Carol, are you in the site right now? Because we only see your PowerPoint.
Okay, so stop share. Thank you, because I'm just
welcome.
talking away. All right. Can you, now what are you seeing?
There we go. We're in the site now.
All right. So once again, let me start again. This is that banner. You can see that it's very, very simple. When I scroll down, I am able to, all of these are carousels. So regardless of where I'm going, I can go left to right as well as up and down, sort of that Netflix feel. These are books that this student has begun to read but not finished. Here are assigned books, which, as you can see, this is a demo student, so I have various levels of books here. But I also have phonics, a complete phonics program that starts with emerging sounds and letter correspondence. It goes all the way up to multisyllabic words and compound words. And I'll show you one of those. As I'm reading, based on my Lexile level and what I am selecting, I am also being, books are being recommended to me. You can see what I've recently read, and you can see additional books that are based on what I have selected to read in the past and the Lexile level that I'm reading on. So let me just pick a book here, and I'm going to actually do Harold. You can see when a student goes in, there's not a million buttons and bells. They can change the sound as far as the volume. They can make the text itself bigger or smaller, and they can either have audio on or off. The audio is authentic voiceover professionals that are reading these books. So I'll just start and let this play.
Harold the hamster. Ava Pressburg. My name is Harold. I am a hamster. Harper is my best friend. I fit in Harper's hands. I like to spend time in my cage. There are wood shavings on the bottom. I like to cover myself in wood shavings. That's how I hide. My cage has.
So let's say that, you know, I've been talking about with my children, we've been working on the words that have long vowels and a silent E at the end. And that's sort of, you know, what our concentration has been. And I've assigned this book to my students. And perhaps I want them to also, I'm going to jump out of this. If I stayed in and went all the way through, I can read it without audio. I can read it with audio. I can read it again without audio after I've already heard it being read. These are being read at the speed of what a child that is reading on that Lexile level, that book has been Lexiled, that would be the speed that they would read. So research based, again, working with metametrics. So if I were to come down here now and say, so maybe I'm working on the long vowel. I'll show you one of the phonics books as well. There's 110 along with a scope and sequence.
The long vowel I with a silent E. The word spin has the letter I in it. When you add a silent E to the end of the word, it makes the letter I use its long sound. Spin becomes spine. Do you hear the long I sound in spine? I. Let's practice reading words that have the sound long I. I. These words have a silent E at the end. When we put V with the letters I-N-E, eine, we make the word vine.
Again, it pauses so the teacher
When we
can...
put sl with I-D-E, I'd, we make the word slide.
I'm going to go forward and just show you an activity.
Let's practice reading more words that have the long I sound. I.
Each book has
with a silent E at the end.
Activities.
When a word ends with the letters I-N-E, it makes the sound ein. Let's keep practice finding the long I words with a silent E at the end in the sentences on your own.
So
click on the words in the sentence that you think have the long I sound.
So in this particular book, we're hearing it, we're seeing words, and now we're going to get feedback.
Vine.
I'm going to jump out of this. I just want to go into one of the, another one of the books, just so that you can see a letter as well, because there's writing as well as reading.
The letter M. This is the letter M. It makes the sound mm. This is an uppercase M. Mm. Mm. This is a lowercase m. Mm. Mm. Let's write the letter M. Follow the arrow to trace the uppercase M.
Now, what's nice here is if I'm on a device that's got a touch screen, I can do this with my finger. We used to do this in the air. We did it with spaghetti. We did it every way there was. On here, kids can use the mouse, and it's not something that's foreign to kids to be able to use the mouse. I was saying that each of these books has three different activities.
The letter M.
And
it makes the sound
those activities do give kids a chance for interacting.
Let's
with
practice reading some words that start with the letter M.
Just to be cognizant of time, I'm going to jump out of here. You saw the books. You saw the way that they can be assigned. Kids can also come in here and search. And if they search for whatever they're searching, they will see not only books that are perhaps in English, some of the books might be bilingual, etc. So they can just do a word search and get all sorts of books that are aligned. And again, those might be Spanish, English, bilingual. The Spanish are read, the bilingual are not read. So it's sort of, they read the Spanish book, they read the English book, and they have access to seeing and reading the bilingual book, but it does not have audio. A student can also save books into their favorites, which is a good way to save books to read later. And then a student can also get into LevelUp land. And this is really, the access is determined by the teacher. The teacher can say, I want the student to have 10 minutes of class time, but I'm going to let them use it whenever they want to on Fridays or whatever. So when I come in here, as a student, I actually have points. I can go to the store. I can buy different characters. My characters can do all sorts of different things. This one's barking. I might want him to lay down and have a nap. He's digging. So it just depends on, and I control all of that. When I go into the store, once I get some additional points, I can buy different backgrounds, different characters, pizza, different vehicles, etc. You see my point scores here. So a child can be a rock star when it comes to having points and being able to build their environment here without having to be the best reader in the class. So that's really, it's motivating in that you may not be the child who's got the most books read, but you can be the child who's working really hard at reading and earning a lot of points and building up your environment in LevelUp land. And again, this is the castle. There's a ton of other ones. I like the birds myself, but there's all sorts of cool characters that you can add, backgrounds and other things, so that it's not babyish. It's built on Unity, which is a way that other games that kids are used to playing are built. So it's got a familiar navigation. And it is one of those things that kids really like. Now, you don't see a whole lot more than that, and there's a reason for that. This is what, as we did research, we said this is what kids need to see. They need their phonics, they need to have choice, they need to be able to search, they need to be able to save books, and they need to be able to be motivated to read. They don't need a whole lot of other buttons and bells. But As a teacher, when I go in, you can see I have a similar interface. My bookshelf looks and acts very much the same. When I search, however, if I'm searching by family, where before you saw this, I can say, you know, I want all these books on family, and then I want to filter further. So I want to filter by standards. I want to filter by audio length. I want to filter by specific skills that are going to be tested within that book at the quiz at the end. So when kids first get on, they are given an initial intake Lexile assessment that sets their Lexile. Then every 2 weeks, they have that either a close or a testlet, depending on their reading level. If they're reading 200 Lexiles or below, it's a short multiple choice testlet. If it's above that, it is closed passages for them to answer. That continues to monitor my progress. After I read books that have either been assigned or books that I'm selecting, there are quizzes that are going to check for understanding of skills and standards. And so those can be turned off or on, and that's really up to the teacher. But when I'm looking as a teacher and I'm selecting what I might want to assign, I may just want to look at books that are about science today. I may want to assign some bilingual books to some of my kids. I may want to decide today we're working on nonfiction, or I may want to make sure that I'm checking for books on family that are just in a certain Lexile range. Or when I go into my classroom and into my reports, if I find additional information that my students need to work on, you can see I have only 3 students because this is a demo account, but you can also see that the reading range is different, not unlike what we get in real classrooms. So I can assign books and find those books very easily with my search filters that are available as a teacher. If I want to save books just like the students do, I'm able to save books in a collection as well. But what's nice here is I can assign this straight from here. I can also tag these. So if I want to say, you know, I'm talking about different cultures and different cultural aspects of our community, I can have that already tagged. And now I may want to talk about, you know, I want to see the books that I have saved that are phonics, and maybe that's the letter P, and then I also have purple, but I want to use the purple book for the letter P, and also when I'm teaching colors, I can give it more than one tag. So again, that's a nice feature to be able to organize the books that I'm saving. I can add any tag that I want, and I can filter by those tags. Again, in the classroom, I can see immediately where my most recent Lexile levels are. I can tell the system, please don't ever give my kids quizzes at the end of the books, or I can say after every 5 books for this student who is working hard to read but reading on a lower level. I may say after every other book for kids who are reading a little higher level. I can also say I would like a constructive response at the end. Maybe not all of my students are ready for that, but maybe Sarah is, and I can put that on. If that happens and she takes a test, the only thing I'm going to get in my inbox, so you won't be getting a lot of emails from us, the only thing in my inbox would be those constructive response that I can then mark as meets or doesn't meet skills and standards. And all that's right there for me as kids are working along. I can turn the game access completely off so that when we have class time, they can't be on it at all. Or I can leave it on and say during class, I want them to have 10 minutes or 5 minutes or unlimited. I can also set up when my class time is, and the students will not have access during that time, except for, in this case, where I've said during that time they're allowed to have 10 minutes. Now, I didn't say that my class goes to Friday, and I didn't say that my class goes to 3 o'clock. because I want them to be able to have unlimited use on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and after 2 o'clock. So that I just put the time in where that time is relating to this column here that you see all the 10 minutes. All right. So when I set those times, that means during those times, they have 10 minutes of free time that during those times that they could use the game. Otherwise, I can turn it all off, and I have all that control as a teacher. I can also re-trigger if I feel like kids didn't do their best, or maybe someone helped them, or I just need a good temperature read. I can stop time and do a progress monitoring assessment. And if I really don't feel like I have a good feel at all for where students are in their Lexile ability, I can even redo all of it and just trigger a brand new intake assessment and start that child completely over. When I go into reports, I don't have too much data because we've got plenty of data, but I can look at just in my kids who are reading in English or Spanish. I can set the date range. If I've created groups, I can look at that. This happens to be for all of my class, and I can see very quickly where each of their Lexiles are. Obviously, if I had a class of 20 kids, I'd have 20 of these, and typically those fall in a bell curve. I can also look at the current Lexile, the number of books read, the quizzes, the time spent reading, as well as the average quiz score. And just very quickly, if I'm in as an admin and looking at all of the schools in my district, I'm able to see more data because I'm able to look at all the schools in my district. So if I'm looking at all of them, once again, I get that same data, but instead of this being for students, it's for each of my schools in this particular district. Again, Lexile scores are here, and then I can see those top scores and the bottom scores. So I do get good data, and just really quickly as a teacher, I'll go in one more time just to show you one thing that I did neglect to show you, which is if I drill further into this top and bottom group of skills, I can see what are those skills that my students are struggling with, what are the ones that they have mastered. And let's say that I'm looking at main idea and I'm seeing, okay, we're at about 83%. I may want to go back and search for, in my class, in my bookshelf, in my search, I might want to filter and select main idea. And same thing with the standards. If I mouse over this, you can see the standard, and I can see where we're struggling and where we're doing well. You will notice that you see more than just first grade skills here, even though this is a first grade class. And that's because I have students that are reading on a lower level, and some of the questions at the end of those books are aligned to lower level standards. But that's good information for me because I may be a first or second grade teacher and I don't know my kindergarten standards, but I know that they're struggling here, and I may or may not have resources for those aligned to those standards, but I certainly do have them. If I'm using the system, I have them digitally, and I can find them just by searching and filtering. So once again, if I were to do family, and just look at the filters, I can pick out main idea and narrow that. So with that, I'll stop. I like this because I have data as a teacher and I have resources as a teacher, but it's not overwhelming. I do want to show one more thing that I think is important, and that is when I go into the book as a teacher, I have information about the book. I can open the book. I can assign it straight from here to all my students or to some of my students. I'm also able to have, this is where I can see those resources and the printable books. If this book also was in Spanish and English, or bilingual, when I go in, and I'll just again go in here, you see these are the resources in English aligned to this book. If I go into the Spanish, here they are, and they are in Spanish. And then I also have the printable books. So I may not have kids annotating within the books on, digitally or want them to, but I can certainly print them out and have kids take them home and read. I can have them circle all the words that start with M if that's the letter that they were just learning, etc. So I'll stop there. Now I really will stop there. Cindy, do you have anything in the big 2 minutes that we have left? Or Stephanie, if you have any questions, feel free to chat them in and we'll be glad to address them.